Hey everyone, it's Michael Kikle. I hope you're doing well today. I have a review here for a movie that is tied to a show that I loved when I was a kid. I actually have my VHS copy here for this movie. A cartoon that I loved quite a bit when I was a kid. From 2001 of all things. God, what a year. What a year, man, for all of us who were young at that time. I think I was about 6, 7, somewhere in there. Anyway, Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, brought to us by Nickelodeon. And of course, this movie, I don't think was the first thing ever to get a release of some sort. There's a lot of prototype things about this movie that eventually changed a little bit when it got to become a TV show the next year in 2002. This ran for 3 seasons over the course of 4 years, from 2002 to I think about 2005 or 6. Anyway, I will review the show immediately after this review in case you want to check it out. I'll go a little bit more into some memories and thoughts I have about that, but I kind of want to keep this video focused, just like I did with my Ed, Edd n Eddy reviews for the show and the Big Picture Show, the movie as it is, from the TV back in 2009. I kind of want to make this video just about this awesome little film that has aged very well for what it is. Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius is something that I find a lot of special mentality too. I have a lot of nostalgia for it. I think it's a very summertime-centric feeling of a show and a movie. I just watched the entire show all the way through. I thought the movie got released somewhere in the midst of the show, maybe after the first season, but that was wrong. This is actually, when you watch it, you can tell by budget, released before the TV show where they had to kind of limit the budget a little bit more. This was at a time where CG animation was not as common as a lot of people would think in hindsight. I think before this, I saw it in things like Beast Wars, which had better writing than Jimmy Neutron, obviously. It had it in Cubics, I believe, was something that came out before Jimmy Neutron, if I remember. But a lot of the 90s shows like VeggieTales and stuff did not have the best CG animation. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't the best. I still think, even then when I was a kid, I preferred 2D animation like Ed, Edd n Eddy. I don't know, anything around that time. Powerpuff Girls was a great one too. I loved all of that kind of stuff. I was a big Cartoon Network fan, but I watched a lot of Nickelodeon and I watched a lot of Disney Channel. This was a movie that I watched over and over again, especially during that summertime season, like I said, because it feels so much like that. There's everything from the kind of sci-fi feeling that Jimmy Neutron's show and movie have, and kind of like this fun adventure sci-fi thing too, where we're not just on Earth in this movie. We have an alien invasion movie here, which is a blast. CG animation has come a long way, I think we can all agree on that. Sometimes used in terrible ways where it's combined with 2D animation, but a lot of the time it looks a lot better than it did back in the day. So you have to understand, in hindsight, this movie was extremely impressive when it came out to kids, and I think to some adults too, and it still looks a lot better than the TV show most of the time. The animations are a little shoddy, I would say, preferably in the sense of saying, when you look at how smooth the animation is, it doesn't look as good as the CG in the TV show. But that's debatable. Like I said, there's a lot of things that changed up too, from styles of clothing. Jimmy is wearing shorts in this movie. He never wears shorts in the show, he always wears pants. Cindy is not wearing her green tank top and whatever. She has pigtails. She has pigtails in the movie instead of the ponytail that she has in the TV show. Anyway, Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, I love quite a bit. I think it's a very good film, despite its flaws. This show, arguably, I would say, is a total ripoff of Dexter's Laboratory. No one ever talked about it when I was a kid. I never heard anybody bring that up or mention it. It's basically a young man who is very intelligent, a boy genius, if you will, like the title says, who comes up with all these crazy inventions and stuff. And typically those inventions, whether they're prototypes to eventually become a really good invention, or whether they're just something he creates to solve a very stupid problem, just simple as, like in the TV show, folding your pants. Now he wants to make self-folding pants, whatever. It gets him into some kind of crazy calamity that could end the world sometimes. This show was creative, it was fun, and I always liked it. This movie is really fun and creative too, and I think it works for the most part with its kind of humor. It does have some adult jokes in it, matter of fact, that I never picked up on as a kid. Made me laugh out loud as I watched it recently, today and yesterday, because I kind of had to split up my viewing. I was busy, forgive me. I had a blast. It was so fun and so over the top and silly. It has a great cast, and it's just fun. in general, from the space adventure kind of thing to the alien invasion plot and how unique these aliens are, I'll get to that in a moment, all the way over to mainly just this kind of weirdness this film has, and the humor, and the jokes, the amusement park stuff I really love too. Retroville is what it's called because this group of friends, kids, whatever, live in a place called Retroville. And it just knows how to have a really good adventure. But basically, Jimmy Neutron sends a toaster, essentially, into space, and aliens pick up on a signal that he had installed into this toaster, and they come to Earth to take the parents away for a sacrifice to their own god. Yeah, that sounds like a crazy Dean Koontz sci-fi plot from back in the 70s. But anyway, it has that childish animation, with the CG and the kind of nature of the writing and whatever. And the cast, once again, most of them, I think, if not all of them, are the same cast from the TV show the next year. I think most of them stuck around as far as I could tell. It sounded to me like everybody sounded identical, but I can tell you, like the main chick who plays Jimmy Neutron, you can tell there are times that Paramount, Nickelodeon, whoever you want to call it, are still trying to get used to how does Jimmy sound? How does Cindy sound? How do Jimmy and Cindy kind of relate to each other? Because they're kind of rivals. I don't know if you all are familiar with the show. But Cindy is a smart kid. She's the smartest of her class until Jimmy had shown up back in the day before we watched the movie. And he had kind of thrown things off because he's a genius, you know? So Cindy's always been kind of jealous towards him. But the kids in the whole Retroville town, and I guess on the planet technically, but mainly Retroville, have to rely and trusting on Jimmy to use science and to use his inventive brain to get them somehow to space to save their parents from being sacrificed to this chicken god. Yeah, it's chicken god. I forgot to tell you about that. And amidst that, we have a wonderful soundtrack that also includes things like NSYNC. There was one of the newer NSYNC songs from when I was a kid. I think it's called Dirty Bop. I can't remember what it's called. But it was like on I think it was on the last album they ever put out too. I did not remember hearing that song in this movie, but it kicked in. This is the first time I ever heard We're the Kids of America. That's a great ass song, and I love the version they did for this movie. It fits it so well. It fits it so well. A lot of the covers and stuff they did for this movie, really good. I think they did a cover of Intergalactic, I think, if I remember correctly, from Beastie Boys. I might be wrong about that, but it would fit pretty well into this film too, because it is a space travel film without real logic burying it. You know what I mean? Like Jimmy and all of his little team take amusement park rides from Retroville, the amusement park, in their town, and they take that after, at first they had joked around about the parents being gone. Now they're all upset about it. A lot of the younger children are really missing their parents and needing them for things like not overeating, which was funny too. A lot of good jokes in here, like I said. The kids take the amusement rides and they turn them into spaceships and rockets and stuff, which I thought was cool. But they don't have to wear like helmets in space, which is kind of fun, I guess. It throws all that logic out the window. We're talking about shit like these aliens that came and invaded and took everybody's parents that are basically green goo with snail eyes. like little stands, and then they have the bubbles for snail eyes, basically, and they're put inside of these kind of floating robotic costumes that look like eggs. They're shaped like them. They're called the Yokians, by the way, which I think is great. Makes me laugh every time I think about it. I really love this movie, if you can't tell. I love Jimmy Neutron in general, despite it being a ripoff of Dexter's Laboratory. And I think Dexter is a little bit better, personally, but that's just my own opinion from hindsight of what I remember from my childhood. This show, this movie, are really good. Really good, and good recommendations too. I think modern kids could watch this and really enjoy it. I've tried certain shows with my niece and nephew when my wife and I have them over sometimes. Like, they love Scooby-Doo, the original Where Are You Scooby-Doo. I haven't tried things like this. I haven't tried things like Spider-Man the Animated Series, or Iron Man's animated series, or Angry Beavers, or anything like that. And I definitely haven't tried Jimmy Neutron yet sometime when I see them. I may have to do that, because they don't do reruns and stuff of this show on TV. TV sucks anyway. But I don't think this is on like Paramount Plus or anything either. So I don't really think I have much more to say, aside from the experimentation on casting, trying to get the voices down just perfect in the show itself. Aside from things like that, some good-ass adult jokes, especially from Jimmy's parents. His dad, I love some of the jokes he makes. For example, towards the end of the film, in like the final scene of the movie, he drinks this soda with Jimmy's mom that Jimmy had invented to make you burp a lot. And he burps this really loud, disgusting burp, and he's like, well, you know what this... He has like a radio voice. He's like, well, you know what they say, it's better to come out of the attic than out of the basement. Dude, what happened to shows from when I was a kid that made all of these awesome jokes like that? So fun and clever and just kind of obvious jokes like that. A fart joke, you know? What happened to that being in modern day media? What happened to all the fart comedy? I miss it a little bit. Just a tiny bit. It used to be a kind of obnoxious and annoying, but I kind of miss it a little bit if I'm being honest with you. The 90s and the 2000s were wonderful, man. I love 80s movies and stuff, but I wasn't around back then, but the 90s and the 2000s, wonderful stuff. I don't think I have anything else to tell you. You can tell this is higher budget than the show, like I said. And that's fine because it's a standalone film. They could put a little bit more money into certain things they had to do. It's only an hour and 22 minutes, by the way, which I guess if you take off credits, it's really closer to like an hour and 10 or 15 minutes. It zooms by really quick. The pacing is excellent on this movie. And again, it just has some flaws with the animation being kind of not as smooth as the TV show. And I don't know if that's fair to critique, but it is 1 year before the show. So maybe there was some kind of deadline. Maybe there was an issue. I don't know, but it's still fun, it still holds up really well, and I'll tell you one thing, this has one of the best soundtracks, like I said a moment ago, for a cartoon, movie, show, whatever, from that time. And having NSYNC in this movie, that's a big deal. That was a huge deal back in the day. Even though it was kind of after the peak of their popularity, it was like right before, I think, Timberlake was about to go off by himself. Anyway, Jimmy Neutron, boy genius. I didn't even really talk about some of his friends. I talked about Cindy a little bit, his little rival. I guess I could talk about some of the other people. Jimmy has two best friends, by the way, Carl and Sheen. Carl is this short, chubby guy. He's a redhead. He's very nerdy and goofy. He loves llamas. And I don't think they hinted too much at the llama love in this movie versus in the TV show, where there's entire episodes dedicated to that sometimes. Carl is hilarious in this movie. There were scenes my best friend from childhood named TC and I would watch over and over again. We would just rewind the tape, which was kind of difficult to do back in the day. It wasn't like pulling a trigger on a controller on an Xbox like I do now. This was, you know, you had to hit the button on the VCR and stop it at the exact moment. Well, we would rewatch scenes from like this movie, like the asthma, what is that thing called? Inhaler scene in this movie. Over and over and over again. Carl is so freaking funny in this movie. I love him. But he's great in the show, too. The actor who plays him is wonderful, dude. And Sheen, his other buddy, is kind of this weirdo, schizophrenic, not as much in this movie as he is in the TV show. If you haven't seen the show in a while, you probably don't realize how much of a schizo weirdo that Sheen is. But he loves this superhero. He buys everything about it, watches every show of it, takes the toys every time to show and tell of this character called Ultra Lord. And Sheen, a lot of the time, is even wearing a mask that's shaped like Ultra Lord's mask, which is fun. I love Sheen. Sheen is probably my entire favorite character of the show from when I was a kid. As an adult, Carl is kind of my favorite, if I'm being honest with you. You have a girl in here who's best friends with Cindy. Her name is Libby. She's a short black girl who loves music. I've always liked Libby a lot, too. Nobody ever really talks about Libby when they talk about Jimmy Neutron. She's really fun. She's not as funny here as she can be in the show, but, you know, I still like Libby a lot. There was one more character I do want to bring up, and that would be this fellow right here, that you can probably see something that looks familiar about him. His name is Nick. Nick is the cool kid at school that all the girls have a crush on, all the guys want to hang out and be just like him. He's not a douchebag, though. He's a good character who kind of is the older brother to the group, despite being the same age as all of them. And Nick is very clearly, and I never realized this until I rewatched the show, he is very clearly modeled after Edward Furlong, or Eddie Furlong, whatever you want to call him, from Terminator 2 mainly. He's very clearly, from the voice that they decide to have, to the hair, all of it, the way he dresses with the overshirt over top of a white tank top, he very clearly is modeled after Edward Furlong, which is wild. I never knew about this, never heard anybody ever talk about this. I guess because a lot of the adults who knew Terminator 2 that were older than me never watched Jimmy Neutron, never talked about it. And then there are people like me who grew up on Terminator 2 kind of on the sidelines, and loved both and never realized it until now. So there you are. Every time you watch Jimmy Neutron and you hear Nick talk, you'll think about Edward Furlong, because he sounds just like him from Terminator 2 sometimes. Anyway, Jimmy Neutron, boy genius. Really good flick. I do recommend it quite a bit. Not a perfect movie. It's got its mess and its issues every once in a while, but it's really entertaining. I think you could put this in front of a kid now or back then, and I think they'll have a good time with it, despite knowledge or anything, or lack thereof, of the show. I think they'll have a blast with this. I actually think this is better than a majority of the show, frankly. As much as I love the show, I think this is better than the majority of it. And despite being a ripoff of Dexter's Laboratory, this is kind of an example of taking a concept, doing it a little bit differently with different writing, different characters in this case, and making it kind of fun. This is a lot more science-focused than Dexter ever was, in my opinion, too. Not in like an actual science way, but just like putting an emphasis on that for a children's show. It was never really a thing when I was a kid, aside from the obvious, like Bill Nye or whatever. This is very much more, I would say, in that ballpark of, well, science will solve our problems. And it's really about more inventing things than actual just regular old science. Anyway, really cool flick, really creative and inventive flick, and I do think the Yokians are a blast. Anyway, have you seen Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius? Do you love it? Do you hate it? I'd love to hear everything you think about this movie and its show down in the comment section down below. And like I said, I am going to review this TV show in the next exact video I'm about to record after I wrap up this recording. This movie here, I would give on a 5-star basis, probably a really high 4 out of 5 stars. I loved it. I thought it was still as good as ever. I thought it held up just as well as a lot of the things that I loved from my childhood that I still watch, whether it be at Christmas time or summertime. But do understand, the show and the movie had this great summertime feel. We're right on the verge of going into summertime. This would be a great time for you to either watch it for the first time in a long time or to watch it for the first time ever if you haven't seen it before and have heard about it. Really cool movie. Recommend it highly. Anyway, thank you all for watching, guys. I'd love to hear everything you have to say about it down in the comment section down below. And again, 4 out of 5 stars for me. I'm sorry for a lengthy review. I'm in a talkative mood. Feeling better. My allergies aren't as bad as usual. So yeah, I'm going to move on to talking about the TV series next. Thank you all for watching, guys. Again, God bless you again, and goodbye.